ladies and gentlemen, and miscellaneous AdventureX. Please join me in welcoming Jade.
Don't ignore this. How do you pronounce your surname?
Leamcharaskul.
Please join me in patronisingly welcoming Jade Leamcharaskul.
Yep, that's right. Can everyone hear me okay? Is this a good level? Okay, cool, okay. So, a quick introduction. My name's Jade. My artist name and handle on Twitter is JD Wasabi. Also, minor housekeeping for me myself is, if you have any questions that you have a bit later after this talk, please use that hashtag, which means more scary wallpaper, please. It's a really, really boring reference to an old film called The Haunting, which was made in like 1949 or something like that, where I really got freaked out by a piece of wallpaper in the scene. So that's what the reference is. The audio was done so well, and I wanted to kind of immortalize that. So that's the meaning behind more scary wallpaper, please. So the game audio techniques and narrative techniques that I will talk here is mostly an audio analysis in horror games. But you can use it in your game design, your narrative design, and whatever. You can pretty much apply to anything. So I will start now. Okay, so what is the horror experience? So far, all throughout this kind of event, we've talked about what gamers get out of playing the game. We have really fun adventures in the story. We kind of get to really know the characters and all that, but I'm actually more interested in what we physically feel. So the horror experience can be broken down into biology and psychology. So in biology, the first part is a brainstem reflex. So that is a flight or fight response. So that means if something is happening in a situation, you either have the kind of immediate urgency to either kind of run away or kind of deal with the situation now. As human beings, we don't have any earlids, so this is a kind of a defense mechanism, which makes the audio in adventure games particularly very, very powerful, because we can still constantly hear. There's no kind of manual ear flap that we can just close and not hear anything. And there's like a whole list of other biological responses, which I can go into a little bit later, but because time is of an essence, just tweet at me. For the psychology aspect, there is the evaluative conditioning, which is mostly more into the sound design area. So say like you pick up a really good item, you hear a little sound effect, that's a good thing. If you get damaged and you hear like a sound effect to say you're getting damaged, you are slowly dying, that's a thing. Emotional contagion is more players mimicking the feeling of the music mostly. Sound design can do it, but it is mostly about the music in your game. So your players will mimic that feeling. So for example, if a soaring love theme is being played, maybe the player, you would feel like, oh, that's really sweet, or yeah. It depends on the writing of your game. Bless you. Okay, so the other aspect to look at the game audio side is that it actually uses a lot of film theory, not because that is your game design, but it's also coming from the gamers or your players' own knowledge of pop culture and other media. So just as a really basic example, diegetic music and sound is where the audio source is visible on screen and to the viewer. So for example, if I tap the mic, you can see me literally tapping this. Whereas if we hear sirens from outside, that is a non-diegetic sound or music, whatever it is. So it could be a real siren, or it could just be someone with a really loud speaker playing it and making us all question it very badly. So obviously this is very important to your game design, and I will revisit it a little bit later. Okay, ignore the spelling mistake there, because this was done quite a while ago and I've yet to update it. So How many designers here or writers? Okay, quite a few of you. Any audio people? Okay, less. Okay, so I'm gonna just try and kind of bring everything together. But as an audio person, I'm always kind of trying to figure out what is the timeline of my game in terms of player experience, and also what is the timeline of the narrative experience as well. And then from there, I can figure out what is the emotional intensity of the game. And we've talked a lot about the emotional context in previous talks. So, this emotional intensity also plays into that, because when I say emotional context, we already oh yeah, that was a really intense scene, or oh, that was a really kind of lull in the narrative, or less intense scene. So this is what myself as an audio designer will kind of do. We will kind of measure it, and then we will try to figure out how can I kind of communicate this to the player that, okay, this scene is really intense without having a wall of text, and to also communicate to the player okay, something really big is going to happen or not. So you can break it down into either the scene before, or even a whole chapter before, to even a few milliseconds before and after. So, narrative designers here do take this into consideration, because I'm sure you do it with all your words and the narrative aspects, but let the audio help you communicate it, again, without adding a huge wall of text. Okay, some random facts, because I don't think a lot of people actually know how people physically react to either sound or music. So one random fact is non-musical sounds generally induce a negative emotive response. This is why in horror films and games we get a lot of more sound effects used in it, compared to more adventure kind of games where it's more focused on music. The human hearing is naturally more sensitive to higher frequencies, therefore it's perceived to be worse than it actually is. So again, crying babies and squeaky doors used a lot. There's a reason for that. It's not just to annoy you. Oh yes, so with certain frequencies as well, it resonates with different parts of your body as well. This is why in horror films and games you get a lot of drony sound effects. You can start to feel it more in your stomach and then at the back of your back. For the really high-pitched squeaky sounds, you start to feel it more at the top of your head area. This is only if you're playing it really, really loudly, so please don't put random high squeaky sounds in your game as well. You don't want to kill your players, literally. Again, I can go on and on and on with that. Okay, so now that we have a better understanding of what sounds and audio can do, I'm going to talk about how you can work it with your game design now. Okay, don't worry about one. One will come later. So, yeah. Oh, I actually got that. So yeah, so give meaning to your audio. Again, this is kind of more going with your game design. You need to pair it up with a particular sound. For example, if you are in first place in Mario Kart Double Dash and you hear the sound effect of a blue shell, you know that, oh, player one is in trouble, and everyone's going to use that chance to try and mix up the gameplay from there. If you don't give any meaning to the audio, then it literally just becomes noise. There is no form of communication, and that's extra work that is not needed. So be mindful of that aspect. Okay, silence. The problem with some games at the moment is that it's just a wall of noise. You're not giving a player a break. When you use silence, you subvert the emotional contagion. That means players don't really necessarily know how to feel. The music has been telling us to feel, oh, you're fine, you're in a safe room. And then when you enter another room and then there's nothing playing, so there's no music, that means I'm not quite sure how to feel about this now. It's very, very weird. I'm going to question this. So again, kickstarts the brainstem reflex. Yep, you'll freak out your players because there's a lack of audio communication, and the whole kind of scene of that game is a lot more open to interpretation. Players will question this, and you can use this to your advantage. The absence of sound is the absence of life. Silence is a reminder that you are alone. Or are you? That's a design thing. Silence technically has its own sound and creates the environmental space, e.g. room tones. There is no such thing as true silence. If you were here earlier and we all had 2-minute silence, you would hear the air conditionings kind of like going on in the background, people breathing, people rustling and all that. That kind of thing is what places and grounds the scene of your game. Don't use like fake silence either, unless that is intentional. Play around with that aspect because now you know what silence does. Any sound followed by silence is interpreted by the brain to be bigger than it is, which creates a bigger and more lasting impression. The reverse is also true. Again, give your ears a break, and the audio aspect will make your narrative a lot more impactful for your work. Cool. Okay, contrast and non-repetition. Does anyone know where this screenshot is from by any chance? No? Okay. So this is actually a screenshot from the making of in Silent Hill 2. Akira Yamaoka actually made like over 100 different sound effects just for the footsteps of the main character. And the reasoning behind it is that if we start to hear something over and over again, we start to become really bored of it. We don't actually hear it anymore. Whereas if we kind of mix it up a bit, add a bit of non-repetition of, for example, the footstep sounds, you'll keep players on the edge. And since we are all adventure gamers here, I can tell that a lot of our characters will be doing a lot of walking. So maybe this is a good kind of thing to like keep in yourself if you want to make your narrative a little bit more impactful or a bit more tense. Use a lot of non-repetition, especially for the footsteps. Any sudden and drastic changes to this creates the deafening silence effect. Again, because you start to become really, really comfortable with what you're hearing, and if you suddenly change that, that makes the whole impact of whatever is happening on the scene a lot more bigger than it actually is. So, do use this to your advantage. So it's just as important to give players a break from all the scary bits, which will ultimately make any forthcoming scares scarier. Or, if horror is not your thing, any kind of very big moments a lot more impactful, and that's what you want to do, right? Okay, so consider the timeline. Going back to the emotional intensity graph that I did earlier, you need to ask yourself as a designer or an audio designer, what has happened in the narrative in the previous scene? And then you highlight the places to make interesting contrast points in the narrative or the visuals or the game design or the audio. Again, this is coming back from the non-repetition side. Playing the audio a few frames ahead increases the intensity and anxiousness of the impact. The opposite encourages security and comfort. This was actually used in Silent Hill as well. So if you couldn't tell, actually Silent Hill is like my biggest kind of influence on this, and that's why I love it. Yeah, so... I remember playing this scene for the first time ever, and nothing happened for ages. I was just walking down this really long path with lots of fog, and all I could hear was just all these really weird sounds happening. I had no idea where it was coming from, and that made me feel really anxious and really questioning, like, is this the right way? Am I doing this right? So again, have the audio and the visuals kind of communicate together, or not. It really depends on the design of your narrative. But again, this is what makes your whole narrative very, very impactful, and it stays with you, and that's kind of what you want players to feel, right? You want players to really feel attached to that journey that you've just kind of brought in. And yes, this is what literally I was thinking about. I didn't trust that car at all. All right. So I'm hoping now that we have a kind of a clear understanding of what game audio can do for us as a narrative designer. And then once we know what we can do with it, then we can start playing around with the actual game design a little bit. So for example, in Silent Hill 2, we had the radio static dependency. Has everyone played Silent Hill? Please say yes. No? Okay. A few people are shaking their heads. So when you're running around Silent Hill, you can't actually see everything because there's a huge fog. So you are really much dependent on your radio, and your radio emits like all this static, which tells the players like, oh, there are monsters nearby, and kind of be careful, be on your guard. The game really trolls you. There'll be some moments where there'll be no radio static, and then just monsters will come out of nowhere, and that will really freak you out. So like, stuff like that, we've been like almost conditioned from the very beginning to depend on this radio, and then the radio just trolls you and says no. The same can be said for Alien Isolation with the saving mechanics. It forces you to wait until the game is saved, and all you hear is that emergency telephone beeping in the background, and whatever is around you, you just pray that you've saved in a good location. In Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem, there is a thing called a sanity meter. It really does play a lot of tricks on you as a player. It breaks the fourth wall a lot. So that kind of reinforces the concept of Eternal Darkness. It's meant to really mess with your head, basically. Stepping away from horror, I'm going to quote Mario Kart Double Dash again, because when you hear the music being played, when someone picks up that invincibility star thing, you know that you should be really careful of who's coming up behind you, because sooner or later you might get knocked over, so you better move out of the way. So things like that will make your game a lot more interesting if you can play around with the audio a little bit. Okay, now number one, we finally get there. The reason why I left the first point right at the very end, because I think this is the most important part. You want to keep the immersion with your gameplay. You don't want to keep breaking the fourth wall too much. You don't want your players to become frustrated with the gameplay. I'm sure they'll be already frustrated with like trying to figure out a puzzle, why isn't this working? And then maybe the payoff isn't that good because the audio doesn't quite match what is happening on the scene. Or it just does the opposite and it still doesn't quite work, even though you're trying to get what the designer's trying to do. There is no kind of surefire way to make the immersion there. This is all very project dependent. So you do need to play test, and you do need to make sure that the audio works very well with your gameplay. Because otherwise, all this effort that everyone here has put into their game, designers, story writers, voice actors even, all of that doesn't really do anything unless the whole project in itself is meshed well together. And I think the audio really does help communicate, and it's kind of like the glue that like makes the whole experience really, really good. And yeah, taking another step back, when you are also kind of creating or designing a very specific gameplay experience, there are other aspects where the music and the game audio parts will come into play. So, for example, we have the music psychology aspect, so we can really mess around with how the player can hear the audio. The psychoacoustics parts is the study of sound perceptions. It's like how they hear it, Music psychology is how they perceive it as well. You get music therapy and health, and then you can get ethnomusicology. So I think we had a talk earlier about kind of the cultural aspects and how it comes into your game design as well. The same can be said with the type of music being played and the music genre. If you want to keep the immersion well with your game design, you want to at least have the correct type of music playing, or at least the correct time period within the gameplay, and you want the music to reflect that, because otherwise the immersion is broken and all that hard work that you've done is just kind of just gone into the bin, right? Yeah, and I think, oh yeah, that's it. So I wanted to have like these pictures up here just because there are very, very different games. They are designed very, very differently, but they use audio really, really well. So does anyone know what this game is on the lower right?
It's a horror game made from RPG Maker.
Yes, it is. It's a game called Aoni, and yes, it was made in RPG Maker. But it did horror so well just because it had a really good audio design. Some of the puzzles were really complicated and you had to pixel hunt in some of them, a lot of them. But, you know, you're being stalked by this purple demon, and when the music comes in or the sound effects comes in, you know, like, okay, crap, I gotta hide. So again, like, horror games, they don't have to be like in high definition. They don't need to have all these beautiful characters. They can work as well in an RPG Maker game. Resident Evil 4 as well is, it's just a good game in my opinion. It's a really good game design. The audio just works, and overall, it's just a really fun game to play. Yeah, I do have an audio analysis of another game called Detention, which is a Taiwanese horror game. It's drenched in a lot of Taiwanese horror, and it's very cultural based. So I am starting to kind of like analyze that. So if you guys are kind of quite interested in the audio analysis bit, click on that link when it is ready, but it's still a work in progress. And I think that's kind of all my presentation has to offer. I hope that's been really helpful. Any questions or anything? No questions, okay. Oh yes, question.
You quite early on differentiated between sound effects and music.
Yes.
As distinct parts of sound design.
Right.
Can you think of good examples of games where there really is a mixing between the two, where something diegetic within the gameplay becomes a kind of soundtrack or things like that? I'm just interested in that overlap.
I can't quite pick up an example from games off the top of my head at the moment, but it's most often used in films. In terms of like a character will walk in, they'll see like, oh, the piano is playing by itself, they see it, and then they might have a flashback to like, oh, I remember this song being played in my childhood or something. That kind of thing is a little bit more difficult to kind of, I guess, communicate to a player, just because, you know, it's like, okay, this thing's happening in the moment here, but we need to have this meta narrative story being inserted. So I can't quite find an example in my head, but yeah, it's more done in film where they're like, oh, this thing happens, the character will now remember this. Oh wait, maybe To the Moon. That might be a good example of a game. Have you played To the Moon?
I don't know.
Okay, it's actually another RPG adventure game, but it's actually very it's a very heavy narrative kind of feature there, where the audio plays. Yes, it does play a large part in that.
Thank you.
Yeah, so maybe try that.
There is a sync level in Fest.
Sorry?
It's a bonus level in Fest.
Oh, okay.
It's called Sync.
Sync.
It's
Oh,
going to
okay.
integrate the music and the gameplay.
Ah, okay. Oh, I played Fez like so many years ago, so I can't actually remember that level, but I will get back to you to that.
There was Bioshock Infinite as well.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Well, the gramophones as you walk around there, they create the soundtrack for the room as you walk in.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Often they take things like classic 80s tunes, but do them in the style of steampunk Victorian London.
Oh, again, like I played it, I just don't remember it. So yeah, maybe that might be another game
I
to
missed
check
that
out.
title.
But Bioshock Infinite, is that correct?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Bioshock Infinite.
Life is Strange
Yeah.
quite well.
Okay. Sorry?
Life is Strange did quite well. A lot of music she listens to, she put her headphones on and that's the soundtrack seeds into her listening to it. Things like that.
Oh yeah, so again, but that's like a kind of a montage thing, you're not actually playing too
You
much?
kind of are, because you're wandering around and listening to it's integrated quite nicely.
Oh, okay. Is that the second episode or first
It's very
episode?
visual.
Okay. Again, I played it, but I just can't remember it. Like maybe because I'm standing up here on stage and I'm like mind blanking at the moment. We have time for one more question. Yes, right at the back.
So in recent years, more now we're seeing the progression in generated sound in games.
Yeah.
And part of the focus of that is efficiency. You have a view on how that can make enrich the experience and plausibility, or the things you sort of mentioned. Do you have an experience that will happen to you?
So the question is like how does it change basically, or
The kind of scope for generated sound in games.
I think it is very interesting. It is very difficult to do well, I think, because with procedurally generated levels in games and audio, it's like you need to write in a certain way that means that, okay, the next 2 seconds or the next 2 bars, we don't know what's going to happen. Like myself as a composer, I meant to write music to literally mimic or copy the actions of the player happening on screen. Yeah, I don't know what you're going to do. So, yes, it's doable, but it's very difficult for it to be done well based on the game design. But if you can do it, do it. But you just need to like really sit down and figure it out. And I think that's it. Well, thank you, everyone.